This is Marco Reus, and you're listening to the Yellowwallpod podcast. Hello and welcome to episode 314 of the Yellowwallpod. I'm your host Stefan Butzko, and today we will talk about Borussia Dortmund shellacking Union Berlin 5-0, the DFB Pokal third round against Werder Bremen on Tuesday, and the Saturday Topspiel against 5th place Bayer Leverkusen. For that and more, join me, Matthias Zug. Hello Matthias, how are you doing?
I am doing quite well, Stefan. How are you today?
I am doing very well myself, and a little disclaimer, I'm not as well prepared as I usually am because I spend all that time with my dog in the park chasing squirrels, so I will need the support of you too, and that indicates there's another person here. He is the editor-in-chief of Spielverlagerung.com. Hello Konstantin Eckner, how are you doing?
Hello Stefan Butzko, how are you doing?
All right, so we don't have any sponsors for this episode.
Probably because you're walking your dog while you should actually chasing sponsors.
Exactly. No, we do have sponsors, but I am not entirely sure what I'm yet to shout out. So, there's always next podcast. Anyway, if you want to sponsor an episode, then please go to patreon.com/theyellowwall, and for $10 you can get a shout out like last week. The fan club from Norway, who we saw on Twitter, had the time of their lives, and obviously with Erling Haaland scoring yet another brace, I'm sure they had a lot of fun. I saw a lot of Norwegian flags in the stands on the yellow wall and around the stadium, so that hype definitely is real. And I guess we can start with the game against Union Berlin before we talk about the cup and the next Topspiel. Matthias, I thought that was a very convincing performance. I did listen while I was walking my dog to the Rasenfunk, and they were talking about Union Berlin wearing pretty much without a chance throughout the entire game, and how seldom it is that Union Berlin are this out of their own depth. So do you think that was just due to Dortmund scoring 2 goals very early?
Well, obviously, I have to agree with what was Fischer, who said this was not a 5-0 victory. I mean, maybe 2-0 at most. And, that Union Berlin basically gifted Dortmund the victory and played very well in the second half. No, in all seriousness, it could have been almost double digits at times had Dortmund not been quite so cute in front of goal. I do agree that I don't remember. I would say the only other matches where Union Berlin got this dominated was the first half against Bayern and the first match day at all against RB Leipzig, where they lost 4-0, which we did reference in the last episode because Leipzig at that time was still playing with a back three. Berlin had I would say maybe 10-15 minute spell in the beginning of the second half where they were a little more comfortable. But there was that huge opportunity where Sancho and Haaland kind of got in each other's way. It could have made it 3, and then obviously the penalty, and that just ended it. The best highlight of the entire match for Union Berlin was the way Neven Subotic got treated by the Borussia Dortmund supporters after the match. But other than that, Union Berlin, where they looked like a newly promoted side, which they usually don't.
Yeah, that is very true. I would say that defensively that performance was pretty good. I saw Lars Pollmann tweet the game sort of real life because he didn't have the chance to watch it live, and pointed out Dortmund's sloppiness here and there. Konstantin, before we talk about the attacking prowess of the mighty Black and Yellows, who are now back in 3rd place after Leipzig and Gladbach drew 2-2. on in the Topspiel. How do you evaluate Dortmund's defensive performance? Because we know that Union Berlin, if you let them, can actually score a couple of goals. And if I remember correctly, I think Bülter had one good chance after a set piece, but otherwise, Roman Bürki, I don't think had much to do.
I guess there were a few, on a few occasions, Union had maybe the chance to do something against Dortmund.
I mean, a chance to have a chance.
A chance to have a chance to make something happen, maybe with a chance to score. But yeah, that's basically it. There wasn't much. I mean, of course, if you look closely in terms of how the back three moved and how, for instance, Piszczek sometimes marked down Andersen a little bit too closely, I think, when Piszczek left his position and basically left the gap open on his side. But that was like minor things, I think, which are important for Favre when he goes into post-match analysis and talks to his players. And of course, other teams might punish you on something like that, but Union wasn't really there to do that. They were really overwhelmed by Dortmund and the counter-pressing, and if Dortmund was not forced to counter-press, just overwhelmed by how Dortmund rolled down one play after another and basically dominated Union, not throughout the entire match, but for the most part. I mean, there was still a somewhat short spell after halftime where Dortmund again got sloppy. It's just, I don't know what the team does, right?
I would say often. Like the 10 first minutes before the break and then the 10 first minutes after the break or so, or basically until the third. I thought, I'm not sure, but I think at least after the break, Dortmund looked sloppy because they wanted just to counterattack. That was my impression, that they were comfortable sitting back a little bit more. But how did you see it? Because that's only my impression, and I might have just gotten it wrong and Dortmund were just lackadaisical.
I wasn't so concerned about let's say 5 to 7 minutes before a halftime break, because sometimes you need just a break, and maybe, not that it gets sloppy, but you might put a little bit on the brakes and stop being so intense. It's not, especially if you see that you are leading and you are dominating a match. Maybe, I mean, even unintentionally, you might hit the brakes a little bit there. But after the half, yeah, I had the same impression as you had. Just that maybe they wanted to hit Union once or twice on the break and basically seal the deal there, which wasn't, I think, the smartest strategy, because even against a team like Union, Dortmund shouldn't sit too deep and basically wait for what's going to happen. Still, there are too much holes in the defense. There's too much sloppiness going on sometimes in terms of marking, in terms of switches within the defense. So it's not the best strategy, just overall. I mean, and there are plenty of matches this season that have proven that to be true. And even if Union doesn't pose the attacking threat that other teams do, still just not smart. But and even when you follow the match and you read some stuff on Twitter, I mean, there was like basically some were complaining about how Dortmund always finds a way to bring someone back into a game, and I mean, there's some truth to it, because that's what Dortmund often enough has done in this season. I mean, remember the Leipzig game and others, and the Hoffenheim game and so on. And sometimes it was because Dortmund got sloppy and not that the opponent got really better.
Yeah, I think that's true, but considering the intensity level that Dortmund sometimes shows, it's, I think, almost impossible to do that over 90 minutes. And if you have a 2-0 lead, I personally am a bit more confident in Dortmund, not pressing as high as usual. But that all being said, let's talk a little bit about the counter pressing and about the 1-0, because obviously it was a little bit luck involved with the deflected shot that Jadon Sancho had, but I think the ball winning of first, I think Julian Brandt sort of pressed the ball at the opponent's box, and then Rafael Guerreiro won it and played the assist to Sancho. Matthias, I think this is really right now the key to Dortmund's success in many ways, that their counter pressing has evolved and improved to an extent that you can make these plays against teams that then fall apart, because otherwise Union Berlin would have been a bit more compact. But if you win the ball in that area, it's just almost impossible to defend, especially if you come up against Jadon Sancho, who is just on fire right now.
Well, absolutely. And that's an element of the game that, we missed for large parts of the first half of the season, where there just wasn't that aggressive counter press. I think, Urs Fischer said, we made it easy for Dortmund because we made mistakes in the build-up play. Yeah, there were mistakes in the build-up play. Obviously, you have to think of Gikiewicz with two massive howlers, which is kind of weird because he's, in general, a pretty decent keeper. But it's not so much that they made mistakes because they were, they did the typical Dortmund thing of just switching off. They got those mistakes also forced upon them by the way Dortmund played. And obviously, the moment you talked about was very, very symptomatic and symbolic of that. And when you do that against a side like Union Berlin that is not technically very as gifted as other sides, they're more comfortable with the long ball, which is something that Dortmund didn't allow them to play. They didn't give them the time in their build-up to launch the ball, so they tried to play out through Dortmund, and that's just not going to work. Not with the setup that Union Berlin had, with the formation they had, and facing the players that Dortmund had. There were a few moments where they maybe could have almost broken, but then a Dortmund player gets a boot in there, his positioning is right, and then it's just a reload all over again through Brandt and Witzel. So it was a very good team effort all around. It wasn't disjointed at all, how they pressed, and everybody did their jobs well, not just in an offensive positioning sense that we've obviously bemoaned in the past, but also defensive positioning. And thankfully, Piszczek and Akanji didn't get exposed. And then once, obviously, Zagadou came in and Akanji went to the right side, it was all over. There was no chance left for Union Berlin at that point.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to Rafael Guerreiro at this point, because I think his hustle and counter press was very good in the last two games. And it's nice to see some heightened intensity from him, because he is not necessarily a player that always shows that. And whenever he does, I think Dortmund play a lot better. Also just because of his footballing IQ and the runs that he makes when he makes them. So I think that's very valuable to Dortmund. And especially in this game, in a 3-4-3 system, you rely on Hakimi and Guerreiro a little bit to really attack the wings, and I think they did it well. And it's good to see them scramble on the inside, on the outside, and to be everywhere a little bit. So I think overall counter pressing is improved also with Julian Brandt doing his thing, and Axel Witsel. I think overall Dortmund were very brave against Union Berlin to go forward. So that's very positive. And otherwise I think just a very good performance against a team that can be very uncomfortable if you let them, but I think defensively that was all quite very sound. Konstantin, how do you evaluate right now, because we haven't talked to you in a little while, the role of the double pivot with Witzel and Brandt? Because I am a little bit in love. How are you?
In love with what? I guess, I mean, it works, especially because Favre adjusts Brandt's role related to what side Dortmund's build-up is going through, meaning that right now Dortmund in build-up focuses much more on the right side, on the Hakimi, Piszczek. In this game it was Haaland, our game is the Sancho side, and Brandt is also the right side at center midfielder, which he didn't play before. I mean, at Leverkusen, when he played at center midfield, he played on the left side. And when Favre changed the system last November, at first Brandt also played on the left side with then Zagadou and Guerrero. But because Zagadou was out, I think there was the switch, and Akanji was not that involved in the build-up because as a right-footed player on the left side, I mean, it's kinda restricts your movement and passing. So that's why I think it's smart by Favre to really pick and choose where he uses Brandt because Brandt is the kind of playmaker he needs. We talked about the counter pressing. Often enough, it's that then after these counter pressures, it's Brandt who plays the pass, who's breaking down the next line and basically exploiting these opportunities that are opened up through counter pressing. So he's basically the perfect counter pressing playmaker, or whatever you want to call it. I don't know. So I think that works quite well. And on the other hand, since with Witsel being at 100% despite wearing a mask and looking like, I don't know what. I mean, like starring in
the Phantom of the Opera, maybe.
Starring in one of these C movies where high school kids get killed in a motel by a Witsel then. I think it's working also because he doesn't sit back. He also runs down. He tries to do some take-ons and stuff. I mean, it doesn't look as elegant as it looks when Brandt does it or Reis, but still it works. So he also pressures the other side and puts pressure on the opponent, and then is also right there for counter pressing situations where he is of course that kind of like be all end all type of counter pressing player. So that works as well. If there might be a situation where maybe Delaney comes back and gives Witsel a break for a match or so, of course then Delaney plays on the left side as a left footy, so as a lefty, and I mean that would also kind of work in that kind of system right now, but of course with Witsel and Brandt it's basically the perfect duo you can have in the 3-4-3.
Yeah, I would very much agree. I mean, I already said it on the last episode. I just wanted to hear my own words confirmed the next week. So thank you very much for that, Konstantin. Of course.
And I didn't listen to the last episode, and I'm just, we are understanding each other basically politely.
Yes, a blind understanding, just like Julian Brandt and Erling Haaland were talking about after the game. Even though I still think that the back heel that was Brandt's sicknesses for Haaland was a little bit, inadvertent, sort of poking in the dark, if you will. But before we talk about our new wonder striker, I want to talk a little bit about Jadon Sancho now, because he broke a new Bundesliga record, or set a new Bundesliga record. He became the first player to score 25 goals before turning 20 years old. And just in the Bundesliga this season, in the last 9 games, he has managed to have both at least 1 goal and 1 assist 7 times, which is just crazy. At least 1 goal and 1 assist each per game 9 times in 18 league appearances. He now has 12 goals, 13 assists in 18 games, and he's the 3rd best goal scorer in the Bundesliga right now, best Dortmund goal scorer ahead of Marco Reus and Haaland, and he is leading the league in assists. Some counted as 12 assists, some counted as 13, but I think Transfermarkt has it with 13 assists and 12 goals. And he is the 3rd best when it comes to scorer points. Only Timo Werner and Robert Lewandowski with 26 each. To Sancho's 25 are good. And according to Transfermarkt also, right now he is the most valuable player of the Bundesliga with 120 million transfer market fee. So, Matthias, Jadon Sancho will turn 20 on March 25th, if I'm not mistaken. And I really don't like to hype players that much, but given these stats and the way he's performing right now, we all know that he's going to be a superstar, but is he already reaching world-class form at this young age right now in the Dortmund shirt?
I don't see why not. I mean, if you think about it, other teenage sensations like Kylian Mbappe was, at least borderline world class as a teenager. I don't see any reason at this point to not say at current time he is playing as good as anybody else is in that position, which obviously puts him at the world class level. And we'll just have to see if he can maintain it. Obviously, he's still very, very young. It just seems like everything now is kind of clicking, not just for him, also his attitude, mentality, but everything around him, the coaches, his teammates, it seems to be clicking and playing very, very smoothly. And I feel like the addition of Haaland also helps bring out some of the best qualities of Sancho, given what Haaland is able to do ahead of him, which obviously opens up some space. Haaland also dictates that now, you saw it against Union Berlin, that occasionally they would try to double him up and man mark him a little bit tighter, and then that leaves space for everybody else around him. And someone as extremely talented and as good as Sancho can exploit that in extreme ways. I do wish on occasion, and this is not a Sancho specific criticism, this is a critique against a couple of his teammates in the last game, that occasionally maybe a little bit more directness and just taking the damn shot would be kind of nice, versus then that one cutback or holding up the play just for that one extra second or playing that one extra pass. There were a few instances where they just should have taken the shot, and odds are it would have been a goal. But, that's starting to nitpick, but you can't have that happen too often, because then obviously even crappy teams will score against you. So, but getting to your question, is he playing world class right now? Absolutely. There's no question about it.
Yeah, we can criticize the decision making, but the problem is his decision making otherwise is so good that, that really would be nitpicking. But same question to you, Konstantin. Do you think that's a world-class level right now of Jadon Sancho, considering that A, there's still a lot of room for improvement, which is scary, and B, we all know that the only way for him is probably up.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you sometimes watch him, like when you watch isolated situations he's involved in, or he's basically the main part of it, you don't necessarily think like he's this outstanding, out of this world player, because he still does a lot of, stuff where that looks a little bit, not amateurish, but it looks...
90 minutes are long for a lot of dumb mistakes. Let's put it this way.
Right, and sometimes he does these, or he tries these take-ons, and like it looks just, it's not working, and he just stumbles over a ball, and that's why I meant, sometimes he looks a little bit like an amateur, but then his output in terms of scoring and assisting and key passes and all this stuff is of course great, and sometimes I think he's not like world class, but he's close enough to world class where he can destroy average Bundesliga back threes and just basically average Bundesliga teams. So which tells you where his ceiling might be. On the other hand, of course, we especially, we three and most of our listeners, I guess, are watching him very closely every week, at least once every week. And of course, just watch Paris Saint-Germain, for instance, and I watch some Mbappe, or as just mentioned Mbappe, and he as well does some dumb stuff throughout the match. And then gets into an altercation with Thomas Tuchel, but that's a different story. When he's subbed off, usually. No, but what you really can, one thing I don't really have wrapped my head around is whether Sancho is that athletic. Just to continue the discussion around, is he really world class? Is he really that athletic? Sometimes he doesn't really look like that high level athletic, like some our wingers are, or a lot of like world class wingers are really benefiting from high level athleticism. In his case, it's not that he's this. I think he's a high level athlete, like high level athlete. Which also brings me to one point, which I've made the argument quite often in the past. That I don't think that he necessarily is like this out and in winger. This kind of touchline winger, where he's really close to the touchline, taking on opponents. I think he. I think down the line he will be much better suited in a, let's say, a half space role. And right now, with the 3-4-3, he doesn't necessarily play as this touchline winger, because usually Hakimi or Guerrero, the wingbacks, are much more outside, and he's a little bit more inside. And even like against Union, for instance, he was on the left side, and Haaland was on the right side, and Royce was somewhere in behind, but also on the right side. It was a mixed hybrid system, and so he was basically like a second striker next to Haaland in on occasions, and that's much better for him. I think that's a much better position. He's not like the Iron Robben touchline winger, just not what he, and I think one main argument for that is that his level of athleticism is not as high as, the Robbins and of course the Ronaldos and Mbappés.
Yeah, I think this is maybe one thing where Jadon Sancho can still improve. We've mentioned the Mamba mentality on last week's episode. And I think he can still work a lot on his physical shape and athleticism and in these regards. But
have you just called him fat?
No, I'm just saying. But I think you're right there. I wrote when I saw the formation first with Erling Haaland up top, I wrote it down as a 3-4-2-1. But you can also obviously play it as a 3-4-1-2, where you have more of a number 10. And I think you're right. It's quite good for Dortmund that you have a lot of players in the half spaces just by default of the structure. And that will obviously highlight their strengths, which is why I really like what Favre is doing right now with this system, because I think, we have a lot of attacking potential in this team, but we have seen during the first half of the season that just having skills and stuff on paper doesn't necessarily mean it automatically translates to the pitch. And now I think we have found a system where that is more and more the case. I mean, scoring 5 goals in 3 games in a row is not a coincidence, even if it was against Augsburg, Cologne and Union Berlin, who are not the creme de la creme of the Bundesliga, but nevertheless, I think that's quite an achievement, and obviously, also down to the fact that we right now have a striker this is absolutely on fire. And, Konstantin, you will have the honor of talking about, Erling Haaland and his accolades, but, before I let you speak, we will hear from Neven Subotic, who, named him in a very illustrious group of Dortmund attackers.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it started here with Lucas Barrios going forward to Lewandowski and Aubameyang. Now Haaland is obviously, I think, right in line with those characters. As far as I can tell, he's basically a mix between Lewandowski and Aubameyang, because he's got also a complete game. He's got speed, he's got finesse. He needs about half a chance to score 1 goal. So I'm happy for the club, not happy for us today as an opponent, obviously, because he makes something out of nothing. So congrats to him and to the club for sealing the deal.
Do you agree with Neven that he is a bit of a mix of Lewandowski and Aubameyang?
Before I say something about that, I have to question Neven's math a little bit. Half a chance, 1 goal. I don't think that works like that. But all right. Okay, Neven is above these things, right? He's not a top tier defender anymore. Plays for Union Berlin.
Neven Subotic knows that the number 1 does not exist in expected goals. So you never have a full chance.
Right. Yeah. Penalties are 0.75. So, and Neven knows something about penalties.
Exactly.
A lot, actually. Yeah. All right. Coming back. I think, I'm not sure. Aubameyang is, a linear hybrid striker. For Arsenal, he isn't a striker. He's playing on left side usually because of Lacazette playing in the middle. Or I mean, at least in recent matches, when I've seen Arsenal.
I think that's more of a reference to Haaland's just sheer pace and explosive speed.
Yeah, but that's the thing, right? Aubameyang is of course faster than Haaland. Haaland is fast. Aubameyang is faster. I mean, especially because Aubameyang has like this basically not Usain Bolt, but almost Usain Bolt kind of running style, where he really lifts his legs and basically like a professional track and field runner.
Have you seen Haaland run? I mean, he is lifting his knees up. It's almost like
yeah, but he's also flailing around his arms.
I know,
which is not like in terms of aerodynamic. I don't think that's effective and efficient. It's not. We have to talk about it, right? He's flailing his arms around like an inflated tube. You know these figures. So and in terms of in comparison to Lewandowski, yes, Lewandowski is a better player and a better playmaker basically than Haaland. His layoff passes are more impactful. His positioning is still a bit better than Haaland. I mean, I get.
Well,
all
obviously, he's not on the level of Robert Lewandowski right now. Obviously,
no. But what I'm trying to do is to the millions of our listeners is of course I'm also on the Haaland hype. I mean, I've been on the Haaland hype, or I was on the Haaland hype before he laced up his boots for Dortmund and yeah, I mean, of course, there have been some questions about his technique and stuff like that, and of course, his arms, high up in the air somewhere. But I just want to make something clear. I mean, Lewandowski is still a better striker, right? At this point in time, he's still a better, more complete striker than Erling Haaland. Just to make it clear, I mean, might change in a couple of years. Of course, they are of different age, and we will never have like both at their peak against each other. It's not working like that. Although Lewandowski seems ageless because I mean, look at him. But I get it. You try to make these comparisons. I don't know. I think Haaland is a kind of a unique striker because he is physical, but he's also quick, and because he is a poacher, but he's also someone who, because what he played for Salzburg especially, he can be involved in plays, he can make these layoffs and so on and so on. But I don't think you can really make a comparison. Sometimes it's just one thing. Sometimes I think Erling Haaland is what Jürgen Klopp thought of Ciro Immobile before Ciro Immobile went to Dortmund and crapped the bat and proved that he's not a tactical striker. I sometimes think like when, that's a little bit of that, because physical, poacher, quick, but also, of course, a technician, and Immobile, of course, wasn't one or isn't one. Haaland is one to some extent at least. So there's a comparison.
All right. So Haaland also, just like Sancho, setting new Bundesliga records. He has become the first Bundesliga player in history to score 7 goals in his first 3 appearances. Pipping, among others, Paco Alcácer, who scored 6 in his first 3 appearances. All of his 7 shots on targets were goals, and I think he only has a total of 8 shots. 1 shot was blocked, and right now he has scored 7 goals in 136 minutes, which means on average he scores 1 goal every 20 minutes, or 4.63 goals per 90. Matthias, obviously impressive numbers, and we know they will regress to the mean. But that being said, how happy are you? And we've talked about this last week, but, just continuing in the same vein, how happy are you that he scores goals like the 2-0 against Dortmund, where he just bursts through, I think, 3 Union defenders and just makes the run to the far post, where then the Julian Brandt cross ends up, and he basically just pushes the ball over the line.
Well, just along the same veins as what we talked about last week, this is exactly the type of goal Dortmund have been missing this season. It's that striker instinct goal, which non-strikers don't have. I mean, we talked about it when Hazard or Götze or any of those play in the striker role. Their instinct is more to look for the pass rather than attempting to score. And I know I am literally quoting a Football Manager attribute at that point. But that's that instinct. Whereas someone like Haaland, and Paco was that as well when he was fit. But Haaland, I feel like it's even more so. That's his first instinct. I want the ball. I want to score goals with the ball and get in the right position. There was some moment, I forget exactly what minute it was, but there was a breakaway opportunity again, and Haaland, broke into the far post, and the ball didn't quite get to him before then. And so he always makes those runs. He gets into that position to score the tap-in poacher goal. But that, again, is what Dortmund have been missing. They have it now. Like you said, he's probably, now we can't say for sure, but probably not going to keep up this scoring rate. If he does, he's going to be the greatest goal scorer in the history of the sport, given his age. But, long may it continue as long as it can go. And I think he'll get more of those opportunities. I think he'll also continue to score a lot of goals because those are the opportunities and chances that Dortmund has been creating consistently, but without anybody really there to make that run and do it. And he's not one to then hold it up at the last second and make another turn. He just wants to score a goal. And that is what Dortmund have been lacking. And it's great to see that Dortmund are no longer lacking that.
Yeah, I think that's really hitting the nail on the head. It's not like Dortmund had particular problems in creating scoring chances or scoring goals. It's just the type of goal that they have been lacking with a true number 9 that they have now as well, which obviously will help them beat more opponents because that I think will help them score more consistently against various opponents on various levels and create goals from different opportunities and situations. So one point I would add is that I also really liked how he won the penalty, because I'm not sure, I've seen the replay like 3-4 times now. I'm not sure if there was a lot of contact, but he just really sold it well that there was not enough evidence to overturn it. And I think that was just very smart to lay the ball where he put it just away from Gikiewicz. I'm not sure if there, had he not fallen down like he had, if he would have been hit, whether it was sort of, him protecting himself from the goalkeeper using his feet there, or whether it was just smart play. I'll leave it to everyone to decide that for themselves. But I think that alone is also something that Dortmund have been missing a little bit, just the cleverness in the box to win a penalty here and there, because Dortmund this season are not winning a lot of pens. So something they obviously like, and then Marco Reus converted, and shout out also to Axel Witsel, who then again scored, I think, the 4-0 before Haaland scored the 5th. Before we end the debate about the Union Berlin game, there is a question from Jordan Johnson at JJ_Johnson_6 on Twitter. And he asks, what do you make of Reus and Hakimi's reactions to being subbed off, Konstantin?
I don't really. I mean, I may understand why Hakimi was, angry or something, because he didn't play that well. Had a couple of situations where he didn't really do much, and you
could say the same about Reus, so it's not like he had his best game.
Yeah, but yeah, probably. But still, just I don't know. I saw Hakimi as one of the underwhelming players in a great or in a good team or great team that Saturday. So maybe I don't know if you have to be that angry, but it also shows you that despite basically dominating an opponent, there's still fire, and there's still someone who gets angry when he doesn't do that well. So I mean, it's a positive, I think, on if you look at from another perspective. Yeah, it should, of course. I mean, if now it becomes like a common thing that if someone is substituted and then, yeah, I don't know, throws water bottles around, then it might be a problem. I mean, it shouldn't become a habit. It looks like, I don't know, they are all angry about Favre or something, and there's this, but I don't think that's the case. So yeah, I look at it from a more perspective of like just ambition and that someone like Hakimi doesn't want to get subbed off if after he makes a underwhelming, or after he had an underwhelming performance, so he wants to stay on the pitch and make something happen, while I don't know, Haaland is setting the world on fire. I mean, I think the same. There's just one minor thing I want to add. I think after the Augsburg match, when you just watched the Royce interview after the match, yeah, he was happy that Augsburg got beaten and that Haaland scored 3 goals, but there was maybe a glimpse of jealousy in hiding behind the eyes of Royce, that he, that now this other guy is in, like he's about to become the next superstar, and Royce has to fight for his place as Dortmund's resident superstar. So not like bad jealousy, might if someone comes in and is like becomes a total superstar, and then there's Sancho as well, who's like, especially in the English speaking media, who's like the focal point of the Borussia Dortmund coverage, because he's English. Why not? Maybe Roy sees like that he becomes older and he has to fight for a spot, not for a spot in the team, but for a spot as like being this great figure, the cover boy for the FIFA game and stuff like that. I mean, it's about that. Let's be honest. Like, that's, of course, it's about money and it's about success, but it's also about like fame and being acknowledged as the top Dortmund player.
Yeah. I think you're correct there. And it's annoying me a little bit. I don't know about you, Matthias, but I think Hakimi doing it is one thing. If the team captain is doing it is another. I don't think Marco Reus should show that much petulance when he gets subbed off after scoring in the, I don't know, 60th minute or so. I can understand that you're a little frustrated because, this is exactly the moment where the game is decided, and the floodgates will open and the happy time starts, really, where you will arguably have the most fun. And I think Dortmund then scored 2 more goals in quick succession. And I think Gerhard Tremmel, the color commentator of the Bundesliga World Feed, put it down quite nicely when he said it's also showing disrespect to the other players who also work hard and want to have some minutes on the pitch. So I didn't really appreciate that attitude and that frowny face from the team captain when you were winning right now that much. How did you see it?
Well, I mean, everybody knows I'm old, so I gotta go at it from an old standpoint where you don't show up your coach that way. I know things are changing, blah blah blah. It's not the Mbappe level of, that was just, honestly, I saw that whole incident with Tuchel. It got a little uncomfortable even at some point. You're just sitting there like, okay, this is awkward now. Awkward. But Hakimi going out fine. He's a very young player. He's probably also frustrated, like Konstantin said, with his level of play. Of all the players on the pitch, he was probably the weakest on the day. And with Royce, I understand that he was frustrated. He didn't want to come off. You never want to come off. You're playing for the Euros. You're playing, and for so many reasons, also to reestablish his form, because like you said, now we're going to score some goals. Now it's time to kick it up a notch. But I agree with you that I'm not happy with, you can show some frustration. That's okay. That shows passion and willingness to want to do it. But then, to, take the tape off of his wrist and chuck it, that's just, not a fan of that, especially like you said, as captain. Also keeping in mind that you have a lot of fixture congestion now coming up. in the next few weeks, now with the cup tie, Bundesliga, and then PSG. So it's just, it was the right decision for Favre to do it, and also to get Hazard on there and have them work together with Haaland. So yeah, I agree with you that it sent the wrong message. It wasn't the right reaction. I didn't like it, but I soon forgot about it simply because the game was so much fun and there were goals and obviously the Subotic thing at the end. And I think that's probably where we need to compartmentalize it at this point and say, okay, it was just a moment of lapse of frustration of wanting to score goals, and he showed a little too much frustration, but we'll just move on from there. And it seems like everyone has moved on from there.
Yeah, I think overall we can be very positive with this game because I've heard from many eyewitnesses that the atmosphere at the Westfalenstadion was much, much better than in previous games and really on a high level. And to many people, the celebration together with Neven Subotic was one of the emotional highlights. Obviously, it's different if you're not there in person, but yeah, there was certainly very endearing and sort of the cherry on top for Dortmund at the end of a very nice and perfect afternoon. And then moving into third place is even better now. Dortmund are only 3 points behind Bayern Munich, and that means 3 points behind first place. So everything is open again, and I think we're in a much happier place now than we were at the end of the Hinrunde. So that's all very positive, and obviously something we can talk a little bit more about when we talk about Leverkusen. But for now, let's talk about the cup match on Tuesday, which is tomorrow. So it might have already happened once you listen to this episode. We have a question from Michael, and he basically wants to know whether Dortmund should put more emphasis to the cup this season, considering their early exit last season, and whether that is something Dortmund should do or not.
Well, I'm going to agree with Lucien Favre here, who said today, I want to win every match. We want to win every title. We want to win every tournament we're in. And I think even though Florian Kohfeldt said something along the lines of the result in the cup doesn't have a bearing on our performances in the league, that's total crap. Every game has a bearing on the next game that you play. It doesn't have a bearing as far as your standings in the league. Duh. Thank you, Captain Obvious. But as far as your form, you want to keep things going. You want to, put another fiver up. Put another fiver up. Just keep going. I do expect some rotation, but the good thing is there's enough squad depth there now and quality squad depth that you can do it. And I wouldn't be surprised if, again, we see, Haaland on the bench and then Torgan Hazard in the striker form-ish role. So Dortmund can put out a slightly weakened squad and still be very, 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 very good, especially when you look at a Werder Bremen side that are in total crisis mode. Frank Baumann, their sporting director, even said the situation is dramatic. So if there's a time to ideally not get knocked out of the cup by Werder Bremen this season, this is definitely it, because they're about as down as they have been for a few seasons. So I think Dortmund should keep rolling. There's no reason to de-emphasize the cup. I think it's important and keep the wins going just because of the mental form that it helps create also for the league and then for the Champions League.
Yeah, I will very much agree with that sentiment. Yes, there is certainly enough depth in this team to rotate. I personally expect Dan Axel Zagadou to either start again or to have another substitution. And if we look at Werder Bremen right now, they are really in crisis. They're in 16th place. They just lost to FC Augsburg, which is obviously a direct opponent for them, if you will. And before that, they were beaten by Hoffenheim. I think their only win came against Düsseldorf, but then they lost 5-0 against Mainz, which is very painful. They lost 1-0 against Cologne. So the last 5 games all came against teams where they think they might have a chance, or are teams where they think From the start of the match, these are the games that you should win or at least get points, and they've lost 4 out of 5. So things aren't really going well, and right now their average is that they score 1.3 games per 1.3 goals per game and concede 2.3 goals per game. So that's just absolutely horrendous, and sort of dooms you for failure. That all being said, Konstantin, what are the Bremen strengths right now? Before the podcast, I've looked at who scored, and it's literally said there are no significant strengths. But maybe since you sometimes analyze their games and write for deichstube.de, I think it is, there might be a couple of discernible strengths we can talk about here. So if Bremen are doing something well, please tell, and then while you're at it, you may go on your epic monologue and also tell us where Bremen are extremely weak and how Dortmund can catch them.
Well, it's a good question to point out some of the strengths, because even I think if you would ask Florian Kohfeldt right now, the head coach, he may not come up with much. Because there isn't much. They got hit by a lot of injuries, especially concerning the back 4, back 3. So that really hurt them during the first part of the season, and right now they're just weak in terms of attacking power. If you want to point out one thing that's still going for Werder Bremen, especially in the relegation battle they are facing, is that they have a couple of gifted or technically gifted players, including David Klaassen and Maxi Eggestein, Noé Sahin, these kind of players, Rashica to an extent, Bittencourt maybe. So, I mean, they have a couple.
And they have Dortmund Schreck, Davy Selke among their lines right now.
Well, but I'm still speaking about technically gifted players. So let me go ahead and not interrupt with Davy Selke. It's just that they have, as I said.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, as I said, I mean, they have a couple of players who are still capable of making plays and playing the ball downfield accurately and precisely and with purpose. But the pieces don't fit together. That's the problem for Bremen. And I was just today, I was just recently asked by a fan. I was following also the Bundesliga closely. Because if it has to do with Max Kruse leaving Bremen before the season, because in some of these more superficial analysis, it's often mentioned that like Max Kruse's departure hurt Bremen that much, and that's basically one of the major reasons for the downfall of Bremen this season. And I don't think like Max Kruse leaving is necessarily the major problem, but what Max Kruse did last season was he was able to hide some of the weaknesses Bremen had, because even last season they were weak in build-up. Didn't really have a plan to move the ball downfield. So what they did was often enough just play a deep ball, a deep ground ball to Max Kruse, who was the target player. On paper, he was the center forward, but on the pitch, he was more or less the number 10, just a target player, who could then receive the ball and make something happen, lay off to some of that his teammates who were running behind him. So that's with him out, and if you watch especially matches against teams that are capable of applying a high press, being really intense, and working against Bremen's build-up, they really fall short of anything other than maybe playing a long ball to Rashica, who's trying to pin it down in the Kruse style. But he's a different kind of player. He's not that well equipped with his back towards the goal, so he's more of a someone who wants to receive the deep ball behind the back line, or at least with speed going towards the back line. So yeah, I think that's the major problem, and that's why you watch some of these Bremen matches where they don't have anything going for them in terms of creating chances and just making a couple of plays and being, looking better than just a team incapable of scoring. Now they brought in Davy Selke. Of course, Selke has a history of Bremen before he left for Leipzig a couple of years ago. Much more physical striker than Rashica, for instance, and of course Osako. So they have something there with someone who can maybe be the target player. Problem is just that Selke is not that technical, and so if you play these ground passes that once Kruse received, I don't really think that works out with Selke. But of course, he's a much more of a physical presence in the middle, and Rashica now can play on the left side, where he's actually at home. So that could work for them, but I don't really see the Selke move improving Bremen to a level where they suddenly become something else. Just watched the match against Augsburg last weekend. It looked basically the same, and it's I think that there was some hype around Kofeld last season. Him being considered as one of these young up-and-coming coaches who could take on a job at the likes of Dortmund. I think his stock has fallen because even after, 18 months or so, he hasn't really come up with an idea how to fix Bremen's build-up. And even with bringing in Kevin Vogt, for instance, who has proven his ability to be a precise and versatile and also reliable central defender. At Hoffenheim he did it. With Nuri Sahin in the middle and David Klaassen in various roles and Maxi Eggestein on the right or in the middle. Still, he hasn't come up with a feasible plan, or at least the plan is not applied correctly. I don't know. So I think his stock has fallen to some extent. And yeah, against Dortmund, I mean, I don't know what to say. Usually Dortmund should beat them. It's why not? I mean, there aren't any arguments for a Bremen win right now. Of course, I mean, maybe I put my foot in my mouth right now because it's the cup and it's Dortmund and it's weird and it's Bremen and it's Davy Selke, who's not that great. Although I think he had the potential once to be great. But we might just stumble the ball into the net. I don't know, something like that. It's a little bit weird.
I would say this game really is a test of character now for Dortmund because we now had two very positive games at home, but at the same time we know that Dortmund struggle on the road, and I think I'm not lying when I say that both Davy Selke and Milo Rashica both have a penchant for scoring against Dortmund, so that's something obviously to keep in mind, that they can score goals out of basically nothing sometimes because Dortmund screw up. So to me, it will come down more or less for the Black and Yellows to avoid their classic individual mistakes they often make, and at the same time, it's obviously going to be interesting how and if Favre rotates, and Matthias, you've already talked a little bit about rotation. I'm not sure how many changes you will make. Maybe we'll see a Nico Schulz instead of Guerrero, so I don't know. Any major changes that you would predict?
I wouldn't be surprised see Nico Schulz. Why not? Might as well put him in there. I agree that Zagadou will probably play. He needs the match time to get fit. Now, Favre, in the press conference, he was asked about if Emre Can is going to play, and he said maybe. So there's that possibility. Other than that, I wouldn't make too many changes with the back line. I mean, they're not going to get stressed too much. They haven't really been stressed much the last couple of weeks. So as far as fitness goes, I think that's kind of what you do. I mean, maybe you put in Hakimi since you subbed him off and give Piszczek the night off. I don't expect the double pivot to change. And up top, I could definitely see Torgan Hazard playing. And then either Haaland sitting on the bench or Reus or Sancho getting a bit of a breather at that point.
Yeah, maybe we'll see a bit more of Gio Reyna. I don't think he will start right about now, but there will be definitely a lot of options off the bench. We have one question about Emre Can, and obviously you haven't talked about him either, Konstantin. But someone asks whether we will see a back three of Zagadou, Hummels, and Can already against Bremen. And I think more overall, is this something that you see happening in this regard?
I don't know if it's will be happening against Bremen. Might be too much.
This is also my hunch that it's probably not going to happen right away.
Yeah, it's too much of a change. Even Zagadou has just recovered or came back from an injury and hasn't played that much since the winter break. So I don't know if you put him in there, him meaning Zagadou and also Can against a newly formed attacking line from Bremen. Just mentioned, Selke, Rashica on the left. So we have to think about it because I think sometimes Favre doesn't feel comfortable when he hasn't figured out the opponents, and there's not much footage out there how Rashica and Selke and I know who plays on the right against will be interesting to see. Maybe Bittencourt, maybe Goller, and Goller will not play on the right side. So yeah, we will see, but there's not much footage out there, so he doesn't know what to expect from Bremen's attack. So I think you go the safe route if you are Favre and if you are basically thinking the same way as Favre does usually. But in general, I think right now, everything considered, Akanji's issues, Piszczek's age, Balerdi probably being held hostage by I don't know who, because there's nowhere to be found.
Same with Moray, to be honest.
Who?
Exactly.
Yeah, no, but it's really I think everything considered, and Zagadou, especially as a lefty, Hummels in the middle and Can on the right might be the quote unquote, let's say, perfect back three if everything works out. Of course, I mean, Can
if the opponent doesn't have a lot of pace, you mean?
Yeah, but that's true for every combination I could come up with now. I mean, just unless you will go all out Pep Guardiola and play, I don't know, Hakimi as a center back and Nico Schulz as center back or something.
I mean, Akanji has made a lot of mistakes, yes, but I still think that his pace sometimes makes up for Hummels' lack thereof in certain plays where he just makes a vital run that prevents another chance. And I believe that when you have Emre Can in that position, those runs will be missing. And, sometimes that's the Restverteidigung, the last-ditch defending sort of runs that you miss, and then you can see chances that you usually wouldn't. And that's sometimes or often actually very dangerous for Dortmund. So I do believe that having at least one quick player in the backline, and I don't want to say that Zagadou is necessarily slow, but Akanji is actually quite good at making these runs. So having him not in there, but Can actually has his pros and cons, just put it this way.
Sure. I still think, of course, I wrote on Twitter that Can suffers from a lack of speed, and I was shown all these stats that he had one of the top speed, or his top speed was among top 10 measured with last season or one of the Premier League seasons a couple of years ago. Maybe, I mean, at one point Hummels had the highest speed of all players at the World Cup. Because he probably had
Hummels can be very fast, but
after 60 yards or something.
Acceleration, not about top speed.
Right. It's
people.
about the 10, 15 yards or so. And there Can has problems. But I also think Akanji has sometimes this problem with like the first 10 or 15 yards, not because he has bad acceleration. I think he has great acceleration. It's just that sometimes he needs about a minute until he has turned or something, or sometimes he doesn't know where to turn to. There's just something I still believe that Akanji is not at 100%. I still believe that the problems he had with his hip are still there to some extent, and that's why
They're
sometimes
still not lying.
All right, but there's still some problems that sometimes he doesn't look agile. He looks like a truck when he tries to turn around, and sometimes again against Union at the one set piece they had, which was a sad piece, of course. When he jumped and he barely left the ground. So it makes you question his form and fitness, and I still think he, not that he's like Piszczek 2.0, because you remember a couple of years ago when Piszczek played with massive hip problems and bags under his eyes because he couldn't take it anymore. I don't know he's at that point, but I still think he's not at 100%, he being Akanji. So that's why I think he has dropped and his stock has fallen. Still the same defender he was 2 years ago, but it's just something missing, and I think it's related to fitness.
It's a very small sample size, but looking at the just isolated at the Union Berlin game, I thought that Lukas Piszczek as a wingback played much better as the right center half. Obviously this is just one game, but I still do believe that Piszczek as a wingback and then having Can instead of Hakimi as a right center back, for example, could really help in high profile games where you need, or in situations where you want a bit more of defensive solidity, because we all know that Piszczek as a wingback can provide that better just because of his footballing IQ and his defensive instincts than Achraf Hakimi can. So I think that's what Dortmund had in mind really when they signed Emre Can, just knowing that Dortmund sometimes just need cooler heads to prevail, and I'm looking forward to how Favre will integrate him into the team. I've labeled him as a rich man's Gonzalo Castro last week, and I've been completely vindicated, considering Emre Can also has a 27. So no, but in all honesty, I'm looking forward to see how it pans out. I personally am not entirely sure where, how, and if Can plays, but it's, I think, a smart addition and a good squad player to have. Matthias, final closing words on Emre Can. Maybe we'll see him against Leverkusen. If you have a comment on, if not, then let's just move on to the predictions, because we still have to talk about that Leverkusen game.
I think we'll just move on to the predictions at this point.
All right, then go ahead.
I think Dortmund are going to win 4-0 against Bremen.
All right. I'm saying 3-1. Konstantin?
3-0. 2 Haaland goals. 2 half chances.
All right. Then I guess it is time to move on to Bayer Leverkusen, who have leapfrogged FC Schalke now. Remember Schalke when they were ahead of us. Now Schalke, I think, after this terrible scoreless draw against Hertha Berlin, are done for the season. I don't think they are even allowed to move up in the table anymore. I think every positive or any rights you had on anything after this game should just be completely thrown away. And I think there should be an official request by the 16 other Bundesliga teams that this scoreless draw, because it was so drab, instead of shared points, it should be 0 points for both Schalke and Hertha Berlin, because that was so dreadful and such a waste of time in my life that I think there should be some extra punishment, to be honest. But let's talk about Bayer Leverkusen, because they're struggling themselves. They have lost now to Hoffenheim last weekend 2-1. A game that's probably a 50-50 tie, and there are other teams in this league that have lost 2-1 to Hoffenheim, which we will not mention any further. So Matthias, this game will be a very crucial one for Dortmund because it's a Bundesliga top match. It's against a team there where you want to keep and build some distance, more importantly. And of course, we all know Bayern will play RB Leipzig on Sunday. So if you want to enjoy the other game, you will obviously have to do your homework first and beat Bayer Leverkusen. Now, if I remember correctly, Dortmund beat Leverkusen in the Hinrunde very successfully, and it was a classic Peter Bosz game to lose. Do you think we will have the same joy again at the Bayer Arena on Saturday at 6:30 local time?
I do think Dortmund will win this match. Now, obviously, it won't be easy, and there will be plenty of moments for Leverkusen. I think there will also be a goal, or maybe even two, for Leverkusen in this match. But Leverkusen, like any Peter Bosz side, but specifically even just Leverkusen in general, they're such a head case. You're not 100% sure what's going to happen. I know that's something that Dortmund has been described as over the last couple of seasons as well. But I feel like Leverkusen's always been that way as long as I can remember. And they just have those massive lapses and kind of, I don't want to say lack of discipline at times, but they definitely have their weaknesses. And I just feel like when Leverkusen in particular, and obviously this might be confirmation bias going back 30 years, whenever Leverkusen have an opportunity to do something big, they tend to not. And so it's going to be a very tough match for Dortmund, but I do believe their overall quality will help them through. And I think what'll help them is also that you'll have a back line or a back three of Zagadou, Hummels, and Akanji. I think that will definitely play to Dortmund's strengths. And who knows, maybe Emre Can instead of Akanji, given that Emre Can used to play for Bayer Leverkusen, so maybe there's a little bit of motivation there. I'm not sure.
Yeah, just looking at the record, Dortmund have beaten Leverkusen 5 times out of the last 6 games, and the other one was a draw. So it's been a while since Leverkusen beat Dortmund, and Dortmund have sort of developed into Leverkusen's Angstgegner. Last time Dortmund played at the Bayer Arena, they were actually 2-0 down at halftime, but then also thanks to Paco Alcácer, and I think Jadon Sancho came on off the bench as well. Dortmund in the end won 4-2. That was a great comeback game, and I was personally there covering that match for ESPN, and I remember just having a lot of fun because it was a very open game. It was a very wild game. Leverkusen also had a couple of very good chances to basically kill it off, but then they didn't. So I think as far as I can remember, all the last games against Leverkusen for Dortmund have been fun with a good outcome. Question to you, Konstantin, how much of a blow do you think the suspension of Kerim Demirbay is, because he picked up a second yellow against Hoffenheim late in the game? Do you think that is a player that will miss in that Leverkusen system right now against Dortmund?
I guess, yeah. He's interesting with Demirbay, or he's an interesting case because he's not quick. So not necessarily like the best pressing player, and of course pressing is a major part of Leverkusen's game, but he provides the kind of passing skills you need for out of the backfield. So yeah, I think that will hurt them. And I don't really know how they will replace him. Maybe Havertz gets moved back into the center midfield and Amiri plays as a number 10, for instance. Might be something. It will be interesting to see how they solve that issue, or like Peter Bosz will go all defense, which no, of course not. He's Peter Bosz. He will never go all defense. Yeah,
For people who don't know right now, I think Peter Bosz is playing in I would call it 4-2-3-1.
Yeah.
And Demir Bay is sort of the number 8 in the double pivot next to Baumgartlinger.
Right.
So
like
it's a very key position, and I always, when I watch Leverkusen, I always think that Demir Bay is at least a solid player, if not better. He's sort of the replacement for Julian Brandt, if you will, in that system, even though Bosz played with Brandt a little bit differently. I think it was also more of a 3-4-3 system then. Will be interesting to see. Obviously with Diaby, with Bellarabi and Volland, and obviously Kai Havertz, Leverkusen can hurt Dortmund really, really bad. And again, I've talked about character tests. This will be not only a character test for Dortmund, given that they're playing on the road, but also just a bit more of a test than they had against Augsburg or Cologne and all these teams. So, I'm really interesting to see how Dortmund, play their counter pressing and how that will work out against Leverkusen, because we all know that the Peter Bosz team usually can play around the pressing. But the question will be then, how can Dortmund play around theirs? So I think this might actually be quite a chaotic match. And looking at how Dortmund are in form right now, if they can carry that through the Bremen game to the Leverkusen game, I have a similar feeling like Matthias, and I think Dortmund should come out ahead. So, just looking at the strengths and weaknesses, I think Dortmund will have the edge a little bit, especially with a player like Haaland. I think he, and for that matter, Julian Brandt, these players were made to destroy Bayer Leverkusen, and we all know that Leverkusen is also one of the favorite teams for Marco Reus to play and score against. So usually that makes me very positive, but we all know if I get too positive, Dortmund tend to crash and burn. So I don't want to get too much ahead of myself, but I'm looking forward to this game in many ways, also just to see whether, Dortmund really are in that title race, because to me, that's a question I wanted to ask after the Union Berlin game, but saved for now. So Matthias, you get to answer it. Dortmund now 3 points behind Bayern Munich, who have won 6 in a row. Are we officially back in the title race now?
Yeah, and I don't think Dortmund were ever out of the title race. The scary thing is obviously that Bayern are doing quite as well as they are. It's nice to see Leipzig kind of stumbling a little bit, and other teams kind of below Gladbach falling to where they are. I think of the ones below the top 4, the only one that I can really see making a challenge into the top 4 is this Bayer Leverkusen side. That's why that's such an important match all around for both clubs. But Dortmund are absolutely in the title race and have just as many chances of winning it as any of the other ones in the top 4, even though I would say probably Gladbach have the less chances of the remaining 4 teams.
I don't know. It's interesting because these things change so quickly that I'm not confident making any predictions right now. But Konstantin, looking at the Bundesliga right now after 20 match days, how confident are you in Dortmund having a title challenge until match day 34?
I'm not sure. Of course, right now they are in the title race, title contention. Problem is that they are not allowed to drop that many points, or like more than, let's say, 5 points or so, until or into March, because Bayern are right now on a run that may change again. But still, I mean, if you drop like 5 points or something, I think that could set Munich, then basically set them free to win the championship. I think Dortmund has the second best shot at winning. RB Leipzig, I think they will go under against Munich next Sunday, especially playing at Munich. Problem with them is just that both their center backs, their best center backs, are or best, I mean, probably best center backs, I can't, arguably, are injured right now.
Is Upamecano out too?
No, Konate and Willi Orban.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, arguably.
Because I saw Upamecano have a couple of problems against Gladbach, so I wasn't sure if there was something.
Yeah, but he's not, no, he recovered. I don't know, he was, I was limping a little bit, but then he recovered and looked fine. But I mean, going into the season, Orban and Konate was the center back pairing. Both have long-term injuries. It's pretty bad. Of course, Upamecano is still there, but they also gave away Ilsanker to Frankfurt, so another center back is out. So there's really that really could hurt Leipzig. And in terms of Gladbach, I just think that they don't really have the personnel to really challenge Bayern over the course of the next 14 matches. But Dortmund of course has the personnel, has the attacking power, especially. I think in terms of the attacking power, Dortmund is the best team in the Bundesliga. Overall, Bayern is the best team. And in terms of, I don't know, just viciousness and athleticism, RB Leipzig is it. So, make of it what you want. It's interesting. What I also find interesting, just to make one last point, in regards to the title races, that the entire discussion about, I know, Lucien Favre not being suitable to win the championship, or he has to be dropped by Dortmund, and so that has died down, right? I mean, it's just I've not heard anything about like Favre should go, or I don't know, something like that.
I mean, Dortmund just won 3 games in a row, but
but before that, before the winter break, they dropped points against Leipzig and lost at Hoffenheim and so on. But still, I don't know, something has changed a little bit. Like people have calmed down. I mean,
well, I would say that that's because Dortmund have changed, and I mean, we were all a little bit skeptical after that Augsburg game, but overall, I think 2 things have dramatically changed with that Hertha game, if you will, where Dortmund were down to 10 men in the end, and really needed to hustle, but I think that the formation change with Dortmund playing Julian Brandt in midfield, and obviously then Axel Zagadou in the back 3 has made Dortmund much better. Just highlighting their strength, and I think overall the in the games beforehand, the attitude of Dortmund has changed also significantly. I thought that complementing the system change and making 2 very crucial and very important decisions, I think overall the team, just the character of the team changed, and I felt like because Favre was very much on the hot seat, and that Dortmund just turned it around a little bit against Leipzig. I think the first half was one of the best first halves that we've seen Dortmund play. Then obviously they laid an egg and only drew 3-3, and Hoffenheim, I think in the end they just ran out of steam a little bit. But overall, just looking at the body of work ever since that win against Hertha Berlin, including the 5-0 shellacking against Düsseldorf, and then I think you had that 2-1 win in between against Slavia, and then you beat Mainz 4-0. Overall, the record is looking up, and it's not only the record that is looking better, but just the style of play looks much more fluid now. The team chemistry is much better, and you see much more hustle overall, something we have not seen before in that regard. So I think that is why I'm a little bit more positive about Dortmund's title challenge now, because a couple of attributes that were missing for a long part throughout this season, where it looked really drab, and you knew the potential that Dortmund had, but not really getting it on the road. And now with a couple of clever winter additions, obviously Erling Haaland up top, but also Emre Can, I think, will head this Dortmund team. You actually have a very good shout for a Bundesliga title now. I don't know if it's possible, because Bayern Munich really do look strong right now, but at least you have a chance, and that's all you can ask for with this Dortmund team. And I really hope they do not crap the bed again. So these next 2 away games will be obviously very vital to see where this is all heading. just to get a feel about Dortmund's road form. And then obviously we will see them face off against Paris Saint-Germain and Eintracht Frankfurt. So there will be a couple of very interesting games. And to make another general point, for me personally, this always is the best part of the season where I can just enjoy it the most. Not only because Dortmund just won, but this is sort of a part where Dortmund usually have found their swagger and are gelling and are playing well, and UA have a lot of optimism still, and B, if it goes toward the end of the season and you are still in the title race, just the pressure of having to win mounts so high that you tend to suffer more through games than you get to enjoy them, and it's all a little bit more nervy. So to me right now, this is the best time of the season where you really get to enjoy stuff, and just sit back, relax, and let these players play. So that all being said, Konstantin, before we end, I would like you to talk a little bit about how Dortmund can, with their attacking potential, dissect Bayer Leverkusen, what the key matchups are, and how you think Dortmund can really fillet Leverkusen.
Fillet Leverkusen.
Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't. Help me, Matthias. What's the word here? Filetieren.
Yeah, fillet is correct.
All right.
I was not questioning your verbal skills in general. I was just a little bit confused about how you come up with a couple of words now, like fillet. Setting yourself, of course, apart from us with street level English. No, just kidding. One of the it depends a little bit on who replaces Demirbay, of course. If it's a more defensive alternative, like I don't know, Stanilevic, for instance, or I know what's up with Palacios. He wasn't on the bench against Hoffenheim. Of course, he could also replace Demirbay. I mean, you ask something of a youngster like Palacios to just come in and play against Dortmund, but why not? I mean, it's Peter Bosch. He likes to take. He's a risk taker. So one of the major matchups, in my opinion, is Dortmund player X against Baumgartlinger. Because if you can keep him busy and maybe even track him out of the middle a little bit. For instance, Royce could do that. If he plays as this hybrid number 10, then you can whip into Leverkusen, because then if the backline is not protected, then someone like Haaland has a field day. So that's one of the major matchups. Of course, on the other hand, and I think Dortmund did that quite well. I mean, the first match against Leverkusen was difficult, especially first 30 minutes or so. What Favre did was he let Delaney play against Havertz. Now I don't ask Favre to bring in Delaney, which would of course not work. But you have to keep an eye on Havertz and where he moves, if he's more on one of the wings, or if he's more in the middle, and how you basically protect your back line from Havertz getting in between the lines and then making a run at, I don't know, Sagadu, Akanji, or who else, whoever. So you shouldn't man mark him, but especially Axel Witsel should keep an eye on where Havertz is at all times. And if it's not too much of a risk, of course, Witsel should engage in counter pressing. But if it's too much of a risk, it might be better to sometimes just drop back and cover Havertz instead of making a move forward and trying to regain possession immediately. Because if that doesn't work out and Havertz gets some space and time, then that's when Diaby and Bellarabi or Leon Bailey or Amiri, when these kind of players shine, because they usually shine when Havertz is involved and feeds them. Of course, recently he was assisted by Demirbay, who is their playmaker out of the backfield. Damian Bayer is not there, so even more weight is on the shoulders of young Kai Havertz. But I think that there's not like too much to carry for him because he has shown that he's capable of doing so. So Dortmund neutralized him in the first outing against Leverkusen, and they have to do so as well again. So one minor thing I want to add is that Leverkusen might be the best high press team, the best team to apply high pressing, and of course Dortmund is susceptible to high press and doesn't look that comfortable when an opponent defends even goal kicks intensely. So we will see. Main problem is not that like Hummels or Akanji are on technical. They are, but they are on that agile, and sometimes they are not comfortable enough when some opponents make a run at them. Then of course when they make a mistake, it's all about them making the mistake, but usually they are forced into mistakes if like they turn over the ball immediately. Same when Gladbach plays a high press. So yeah, that's one minor thing. I'm really curious about how Dortmund fares against the Leverkusen's high press, and also how Peter Bosch what Peter Bosch does against Dortmund, if he's just his usual self, and which is exciting and also sometimes pretty ridiculous. But that's the Peter Bosch experience. You know, as a Leverkusen fan, at least you have something. You feel something when you watch a Peter Bosch team.
Yeah, isn't that nice? Less agony since he is no longer a Dortmund, but no, Leverkusen. But Matthias, this is sort of my next question to you, because I think Leverkusen games right now with Peter Bosch are quite unique for Dortmund. If you think back, the last two games were both played at the Westfalenstadion, and in both instances, Leverkusen, I think, in the end had 66% possession, which is just not something that doesn't really happen that often. Even when Bayern play at the Westfalenstadion, you usually don't see these kind of numbers. And I remember last season, I think it was this season, between the 65th and the 80th minute, even though it was a 4-0 win in the end, Leverkusen had, I think, like 73% within these 15 minutes, just utterly dominating Dortmund without ever really creating too many chances. But nevertheless, if you do not have the ball that much, it's a completely different game. So my question is, how do you think Dortmund will deal with that? And how will Dortmund's backline shape that experience for Dortmund? Because Konstantin just pointed out correctly that Dortmund sometimes get a lot of problems when they are pressed, and especially in the very first build-up moment where Bürki plays the ball to Akanji, and then you play it onto Piszczek, sort of in that area around their own right corner flag on that right side. Dortmund sometimes have problems to free themselves, and obviously on the other side. So how do you think Dortmund will deal with the very dominant Leverkusen?
Well, having a lot of the ball but not doing anything with it, does it even matter? You know, I get it. When you dominate possession, or when you have a lot of possession, you have the ball a lot. Obviously, if you don't have the ball, it's hard to score. But I think Favre is perfectly happy and content with letting Leverkusen have the ball and not really do much with it. But given how Peter Bosch likes to push super high up the pitch, it opens up so much space for, you know, the likes of Haaland or Sancho or Brandt or anybody else to run into, especially given the pace that you now have with Haaland there. I'm seeing in my head, I'm already visualizing of quite a few of those textbook Mats Hummels outside of the right boot passes into space. But when Dortmund have the ball in their own half, like you said, that pressing that we know is going to come and is going to happen, that's going to be the key one. And that's where, you know, I would feel better with Lukas Piszczek as a right wing back than necessarily Hakimi, just because I feel like that's when a cooler head needs to prevail a little bit in situations like that, because we know Hakimi can make those mistakes when put under a ton of pressure. I feel like on the other side, then Guerreiro would probably be the better option than Schulz, just because Guerreiro is more able to pass out of a situation like that, especially if you have a Zagadou on that side and a Brandt to kind of combine, and then maybe a Royce dropping deeper to help out. So it's going to be very interesting to watch. I think if we get a full strength back line, i.e. a full strength back three of Hummels and Zagadou and Akanji or Can, I feel more confident than if it's going to be a backline of Akanji on the left, Hummels in the middle, and Piszczek on the right, and then throwing in Hakimi. I think then Dortmund is going to have a lot of problems in their build-up play. But again, I do trust the occasional Hummels pass to, really just a long ball to unlock Leverkusen, because there's going to be space for these really fast attacking players to get into. So it's going to be, there are going to be opportunities on both sides. Like I said, it's not going to be easy for Dortmund at all. And I could see Leverkusen getting a draw or winning this, but in my gut, I do still feel that Dortmund will come away the winning side.
Yeah, I will say this, that both Diaby and Bailey are not exactly famous for tracking back, and I think this is the spaces on the wings where Dortmund can really exploit Leverkusen, and we've seen Dortmund's transition play become stronger and stronger over the months. It's still not as good as it could be, but I think especially with the addition of Julian Brandt now in midfield, Dortmund have become more vertical and quicker. So that's one thing, and I really do want to see how Dortmund react to that counter pressing now with Haaland up top. If we will see players just try to punt it to him to, lay it off, which is obviously not an easy endeavor against a Tar or a Bender, but I just wonder if that has any effect on Dortmund's overall approach to a counter pressing, and whether we would see just more long balls from the black and yellows, and whether that helps them or whether that makes matters worse. That's, I guess, just something we will have to learn and see how it goes. But I think we've talked a little bit. I think we've talked more than enough now about these 3 games. We're 1.5 hours into the show, and I think that's a very good moment to end it. So I will introduce the predictions now with a 4-2 win for Dortmund. Konstantin, what's your guess?
Yeah, an exciting and wonderful 2-1.
Matthias?
I'm going to go with 3-2. A lot of back and forth, ebbs and flows, and I think a late Haaland goal gets Dortmund all 3 points.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to Dortmund's struggle, because we all know they drop off at some point and there will be the sloppy phase, and it's going to be brutal. So this is going to be a game where everyone shall be on the edge of their seats. But, we all look forward to it. And in that vein, it's also time to say goodbye. Konstantin, how can people find you on Twitter and your work?
They just should check out my Twitter account, cc_ACKNER.
All right. Yeah, where you can find his new YouTube channel, among other things.
Everything. Texts, videos, banter, serious analysis, personal stuff, but also, of course, related to professional football and beyond.
That's just great. So please go follow Konstantin, as always. Also,
or unfollow me. I don't know. It depends.
Anyway, Matthias, how can people get in touch with you?
You can find me on Twitter at Matthias Hook, and since I am not the media mogul that Konstantin is these days, you will find nothing there except my full opinion.
Which is also very wholesome. You can find me at Stefan Butzko. I will refrain from commenting how my Twitter account looks like. I will let other people discuss.
It's a mess. All right, It's a mess.
All right. Konstantin, I'll just cut you out from now on, and we'll continue with my outro. You can find all of us at Yellowwallpod on Twitter and Facebook. If you want to read our written stuff, please go to theyellowwall.net. If you want to unlock the paywall content, go to patreon.com/theyellowwall. For $1, you can access all our written content. And if you want to subscribe to the podcast itself, please go to SoundCloud, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, etc. And one personal ask is obviously you can find our show also on YouTube. Please subscribe there, so at some point we can even monetize that without it being too annoying. So if we get, I think 1,000 subscribers is what you need. We have reached 100 now, so please everyone go to our YouTube channel, which is also the Yellow Wall, and subscribe, and that would be awesome. So yeah, anyway, that should be all for this week. Again, thank you to Matthias and Konstantin for coming on and lending their expertise, and of course everyone out there listening, contributing, sharing, and all that. As always, thank you and goodbye.